we envision for our Fireside Chat series is to have a series of quite in-depth and honest chats about the transportation profession. So today I'm pleased that you can join us tonight for our first session on navigating diverse paths in transportation, where we have 4 amazing speakers lined up. My name is Sarah Jung and I'm the co-vice president for ITE-ANZ, and tonight I will be your moderator. Before we start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and pay my respects to elders past, current and future. I would also like to acknowledge that today is National Sorry Day and acknowledge the mistreatment of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who were forcibly removed from their families and communities, which we now know as the Stolen Generation. As many of you know, tomorrow will start a week of National Reconciliation Week, so please keep an eye out for events online. I would also like to thank our section sponsors and corporate supporters for today's event. For those of you who are new to ITE, we are an international education association with a focus on transport. We have 15,000 members internationally across 90 countries. In Australia and New Zealand, we have branches in Auckland, Melbourne, and Sydney, and currently we have 280 members. Please check out our website, www.ite.org.au, for more information on the ANZ committee, activities, and upcoming events. So a little bit of housekeeping before we start. Please keep your speakers muted until we get to the Q&A section of today. If you have any technical problems, please let me know in the comments questions part. So for those unfamiliar with GoToTeams, there's a little chat bubble, looks like a thought speech bubble on the right-hand side of GoToTeams. So if you're experiencing any difficulties, send me a message and I will be monitoring these during the session. We will also make a recording of today's session and it will be available on the ITE website within a few days' time. In today's presentation, you will hear from 4 speakers, and then we will have our QA session for all the speakers towards the end of the session. If you have questions for a specific speaker, please note down your question in the chat. So if you have a specific question for Kate, for example, maybe question it as Kate and then your question, and then I will, in the Q&A part of the session, I'll be moderating those questions. Okay. So without further ado, let's start our session. I would like to introduce you to our first presenter, Kate McDonald. Kate is a civil engineer and transport planner with more than 27 years of experience in consulting and local government throughout Australia and London. Commencing her work in local government, Kate steadily gained experience in traffic engineering, strategic modelling and transport planning throughout the first decade of her career. During her time at WSP in both London and Australia, she developed a skill for managing transport planning and concept design projects ranging from very small to 300 million worth in CapEx, with a focus on bringing together multidisciplinary teams. Following 10 years at WSP in Maroochydore, Perth and Melbourne, Kate joined Pitt & Sherry in May 2019. Sorry if I butchered the city. As the Transport Infrastructure Section Leader, where she's responsible for sustainability and growth of Pitt & Sherry's transport infrastructure business. In October 2019, Kate was elected to the board of Pitt & Sherry. I will now hand you over to Kate.
Thanks, Sarah, for that lovely introduction. And thanks, everyone. I'm really actually pleased to be able to share with you an overview of my eclectic career. I feel like my career is actually made for this topic of navigating a diverse career, because navigating is exactly what I've done. I certainly didn't set out at any point to think I'd love to be the national transport leader of a medium-sized Australian consultancy, but here I am, and I'm absolutely loving it. So I didn't have traffic or transport in mind when I chose civil engineering. When I finished school, I wanted to do something practical. Um, and I liked the idea of being able to work in the country, which is where I grew up. And so I thought engineering would make good use of my talents and would also offer lots of opportunities down the track, which in fact it has. Um, I put this slide together actually for the presentation I did to the shareholders of Pitt and Sherry. It's a Tasmanian sort of originating company. A lot of the shareholders are actually in Tasmania, and I hadn't been at the company very long. So I wanted to just show to them in a really quick snapshot that my experience actually would be of value to their company, in that it was fairly broad. It covered a lot of different employer organisations and a lot of the different sectors that Pitt and Sherry worked in, even though I'd never worked at somewhere quite like Pitt and Sherry. So when I finished my degree at Swinburne in the early 90s, it was actually a recession in Victoria, and it was very difficult for graduates to get jobs. So I was very, very lucky to get a job at actually Gisborne Shire Council, just north of Melbourne, and that gave me a really good grounding in pretty much general civil engineering, a lot of surveying, a little bit of road design, civil design, management of small projects, but also a little bit of strategy development. And I really did enjoy at that stage, I loved looking at strategies for walking and cycling. I had done very little transport at university, but I felt that that was an area that I really liked. So when I was made redundant during the forced amalgamation of councils, sort of in the mid-90s, I kind of decided I'd like to explore that area a little bit more, and I actually ended up working at Turnbull Fenner, which is not on the slide. I couldn't fit all of my jobs on this circle, so I was very lucky again to get a role at Turnbull Fenner, and from Turnbull Fenner ended up at Bayside City Council, where I was a traffic engineer for a year. Made redundant again due to just some of the structural changes that were happening in Victoria at the time. It was difficult, and it's quite challenging early in your career to have those early redundancies. But what it does show you is that there are benefits from moving. So you're forced to move, and you realise that actually sometimes where you end up is better. So I headed off to Shoalhaven City Council, which is actually in New South Wales, where they offered to train me in strategic modelling, and they did train me, and I worked there for 3 or 4 years, really enjoyed it, but felt that perhaps it was very country, maybe a bit too country for me. And that was at a point where consultancies in London started advertising for Australian engineers. So I took the opportunity to travel, headed off to the UK to work for Hyder Consulting, which I did for a year, and ended up then working for WSP in the city, and doing really the type of work there that is the work that I've done really ever since, managing pretty big projects that have an aspect of modelling, an aspect of traffic engineering, an aspect of transport planning, and doing that for both private and public clients. So that sort of came to an end when I felt like I'd been in the UK for long enough. I was offered a job at TTM in the Sunshine Coast, which seemed like fun. Did back to basic traffic engineering, lots of CIDRAs, lots of TIAs, mostly working for consultants. Very, very hard work, as I'm sure most of you know, and sometimes not that rewarding. That morphed into a role actually at Caloundra City Council, which then became Sunshine Coast Council, went into a really destabilised sort of period there in Queensland. But fortunately I was on a steering group for the Coast Connect bus project, and which was being done by PB, and they offered me a job. So I took that, took over the project from a project management side, and I worked there at PB in Maroochydore for about 3 years. More change. PB was purchased by Balfour Beatty in around about 2010, 2011, which was fine. It didn't affect us hugely in Australia, but you know things do change. And we also had the GFC and a real downturn in work in the Sunshine Coast. So I was asked to move to the Perth office with 3 other engineers to set up the transport team in Perth. And once again, seemed like a great opportunity, great way to see a bit more of Australia. And so that's what I did. I went there for 4 years. We still have a very sustainable team there now, and it was very interesting. So by this time, I had been away from Melbourne for almost 20 years, and I could easily have stayed in Perth, but in that downturn, my partner was finding it very difficult to get work, and WSP's Melbourne office was really picking up, so they asked me to move back to Melbourne. And not that long after I returned to Melbourne, someone left and I was asked to take over an entirely different team, which is the roads and bridges team. So at that point, that again, nothing I'd ever really wanted to do, but I felt that if I wanted to progress, it wasn't something I couldn't say no to. So I said I would do it for a few months, and I absolutely loved it. So, you know, I think sometimes these things come along and you take them on, and it turns out to be something that was just right for you. And that really positioned me really well for the role that I now have at Pitt and Sherry, which encompasses all aspects of transport. If you want to go to the next slide, Sarah, or skip through the next ones. I think I'm taking too long. Is that working? There we go. And the next one. So reasons to move, I guess I've probably already said those. Sometimes you really, sorry, if you go back to the animation. Sometimes you really don't have a choice. You know, sometimes if you don't have a job and a job somewhere else, you have to move. But often I think it's also for the adventure. You can move to learn new ways of doing things. You can move to learn and to understand different cultures. And as I said, because there's work there, you know, if you don't have a choice, you need to move, and you'll usually find that it's a good thing to do. And if you wanted to move on, Sarah, a little bit slow. So over that time, that flexible working, as it happened purely by chance, when I came back to Melbourne, my father was diagnosed with a terminal illness. So working part-time and working really flexibly really just allowed me to spend more time with him. I don't have kids, but I certainly think that flexible working and part-time working just gives people control over their lives and allows them to do all sorts of other things out of work that are being a good community member or a good family member. And just the next one, Sarah. And just a quick note on diverse experiences that I think is really important. It reminded me of something today. I love this photo. So this is from about my 3rd week at Pitt and Sherry, where I was asked to facilitate a workshop for the bridge team. I was the only person in the room who wasn't a structural engineer, and they did a little exercise in teams of 2 where we had to build a tower out of spaghetti, and my team won. So that was very exciting for me. Wasn't great for them, but I just think it shows that sometimes you come at things with different experience and different background, and you will actually have a better answer. And I think it's really important to remember that when we're at work and when we're choosing who our teams are going to be, and make sure that we're not all too similar. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
It's a lot to cover in 5 minutes.
So as I yes. So for those of you who just joined, we'll be taking questions towards the end. So as the presenters speak, please note down your questions, and you can do so either through your own notes or via the chat box in GoToMeeting, and we'll have a joint Q&A session towards the end of this session. Okay, our next presenter is Dr. Mike Ma. Mike is a lecturer of civil engineering at Monash University and an affiliate of the Public Transport Research Group at Monash University and Urban Mobility Lab at MIT. Mike has an interdisciplinary background in information technology, computer science, and transportation engineering. His main research areas include big data analytics, large-scale optimization, public transport, shared mobility, and demand management. Before joining Monash in 2019, he was a postdoc research associate at Northwestern University and MIT Transit Lab. In this role, he co-managed and led the research partnership program with Mass Transit Railway Corporation Limited, Hong Kong, and participated in various projects from world-leading metro agencies, including Transport for London, MTBA in Boston. I will now hand over to Mike.
Okay, thanks for the introduction. Hello, everyone. I'm Mike. I'm a lecturer at Monash, also a staff member for the PDRG group. PDRG group is a group of researchers that is fan of public transport at Monash that is led by Professor Graham Curry. So for this presentation, I will talk about the career part, but I realize most of my career is in university. I also add like this research part for the presentation. So next slide. Just a quick overview about my career path. Can you click? So this has already been introduced. I finished my bachelor and the master's in China, and then I came to Australia, studying my PhD in transportation engineering at UQ. And after finished that, I went to the United States, spent like 2.5 years for my postdoc, where I co-managed the research partnership between MIT and Mass Transit Railway in Hong Kong, and also the Transport for London projects. And then in the early March 2019, I joined Monash University. Next slide. So for my research career, it is all like around the data analytics and also how to make use of the data to help us to solve some of the issues or challenges in transportation. For the data analytic, basically I focus on the inference, prediction, optimization. These are three key techniques that I try to develop by integrating multi-source of data into some mathematical learning models. For the inference, is basically a problem try to use the historical data to understand like what has happened in our system and how our customers travel in the system, what is their experience, to basically to extract insights, to extract patterns that can help us to build the prediction models. And use the prediction models, we want to inform the operations in real time, like the predict control the vehicles, and also like the information provision to passengers to help them to make informed decisions for their travel. And also like I try to look at the opportunities that is provided by the technology today and also the data analytics that we really need to probably redesign the current transportation system to really improve the practice. In terms of the data, there's a traditional data source from dedicated sensors like the loop detectors, the camera data, and also there's also opportunistic sensors like the GPS devices, the smart card data, smartphones, and also there's lots of social media data that can also provide lots of useful information, especially during disruptions. In terms of techniques, I'm trying to summarize like all the techniques because I use computer science, mathematics, and also terminology and transportation. And all these techniques combined, it can be called data science. And this is the definition that is made by someone. I think this is a very good summary about the techniques that I have used. Next slide. Yeah, I think I need to skip this slide. Yeah. Skip this one. Yeah. So this slide, no, the previous one. As I mentioned, I tried to summarize my research path because I changed my major for my PhD. And So this picture, this graph basically shows the overview about my work in the transportation area. I try to develop the customer-centric data analytic and optimization. It will drive online and offline functions that is can be used in transportation, different applications in transportation. In terms of like my different stage of the research, for my PhD, because I have the background of control as well, I focus on the capacity utilization by controlling the vehicles and the infrastructures like the stations and also the signals. And then for my postdoc, I try to expand my area and I try to look at how to better utilize the capacity from the demand side. To manage the demand. This is the project that I did for Hong Kong. This is early bird promotion. We try to design the discount strategies and incentives to try to incentivize people to travel off-peak hours. It's like the free travel before 7 in Melbourne. And then after I joined Monash, I tried to think about like based on my background, like IT, computer science, and also terminology and transportation, what I can do. What is the unique things that I can be different from others. So that's what this is one of the project that I have been working on now. It's called like a personal signal control. So if we think about the traditional way to solve the congestion, which is the biggest problem in transportation, either for the car traffic or it is like for the public transport system. The way that we can approach this problem, either from the infrastructure point of view, like the traffic signal control, or we can also control the vehicles. And also like the demand management is another perspective. But now, since we have the smartphones, we can do better. Right? We can approach different individuals to do the control. This is like very similar to traffic signal control, but this is called personal signal control. Use the incentives and also the information with the mobile phones that we can incentivize people to travel collaboratively so that we can solve the congestion. Right? And the personal signal can be something like we can recommend the time when they will travel, the mode they will use, and also the route they will use. Right? So next slide. So the lessons learned, this is mostly related to the my experience in academia. Because in academia, we need to work hard, this is for sure. There's no good way to bypass this. But working too hard is not a good thing. And sometimes it's very difficult to balance the life and the work. That is one thing that I'm still trying to learn and try to adjust myself. And the second is like respect the adventure more than metrics. If someone has stayed in academia, you probably know that we are assessed by how many publications that we have, what is the H index, how many people cite our papers. But sometimes I don't think that is a good way to guide our research because what I value is something that we can really make impact in practice. We need to make our research that can be used in practice, right? Not only just publications. And collaboration is also important, but we should be careful to choose the people that we are going to work with, that we are happy. And also like some people that we can learn and we can get things done is not only the people that is nice. And after I joined Monash, I found like I need to be an all-rounder. Not only about the research, but there's also different roles like the teaching, supervision, administration. Those are the things that is also very important because someone probably is very focused on research, they just neglect some other aspects. That is not a good thing, I think, to work in a department in a university. I also like it is very stressful to be in academia. The suggestion or the lesson that I learned is that like I need to be comfortable to be at the moment, but and also like I need to keep working, keep progressing, even I don't know what the road ahead. It's just some lessons. And in the end, next slide. In the end, I just want to share some of the quotes that is related to the data science, because there's lots of discussions about the data science in different areas, also like in transportation. So the goal of data science is to turn data into information, and also to turn the information into an insight or into wisdom or knowledge that we can use to help us to make the decisions, to improve our practice in transportation. But the biggest obstacle, the challenge to use data science is actually the human, right? It's not the technique itself, it's the human. And the funny thing is, like, if you torture this data enough, right, you play with the data, and you can always get anything that you want, right? You can get the results that you would like to get by just manipulate the data differently. So that's also the issue, and also I would like to share with everyone that probably we need to keep in mind, like, data science is good, but depends on how we are going to use it. Yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you for sharing with us your lessons learned and those three quite cool to me data quotes. Our next presenter is Samiha Najem. Samiha is currently on secondment with Sydney Trains and has a varied career in the transport industry spanning across roads, rail, buses and ferries, delivering integrated transport outcomes that have long-term benefit to communities drives her passion in the transport industry. She is also interested in the application of sustainable decision-making, in particular in the early stages of planning, and ensuring the systems thinking approach is embedded in concepts through to detailed design works and throughout the system lifecycle. Samiha has contributed to projects from planning through to delivery and operations in Sydney Metro, Parramatta Light Rail, motorway projects, Western Sydney Airport, Northern Beaches B Line, and Newcastle Light Rail. So for those of us who are familiar with Sydney projects, it looks like Samiha has pretty much worked on all the key Sydney projects that have happened in the current years. These projects have covered multiple modes with an outcome of a cohesive integrated transport system. Outside her work, Samiha is a passionate advocate for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics in schools and enjoys being a part of the outreach education programs. Additionally, she is currently the Vice Chair of Women in Engineering. I'll hand over to Samiha.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for the invitation to speak tonight. I've gathered a lot of points for the last two presentations, so I'm grateful that I was at that session. Covered some useful tips. So as per introduction, my name is Samiha Najem. I currently work in, I'm currently working, am I? Oh. Is everything okay?
Yes. Can everyone see see the screen, or has it disappeared?
I can't see the screen. Okay.
Samiha's being made the presenter and we've lost the slide. So.
Okay, apologies. I will share my screen very shortly.
I can continue, it's fine. So I'm currently in the transport industry. I've been in the industry for the last 10 years. When I first, so I never planned to start in this industry, much like some of the presentation that Kate went through. It wasn't necessarily planned, but I was definitely grateful to, there we go. Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. So tonight, that's what I'll be sharing a bit about, my own journey, how I got here, what has helped, and really some key tips I learned along the way that I would like to share. So first up, what did I study? So I finished school in 2006. I didn't necessarily have the life experience to know what I wanted to be, or the guidance to say, may go in this direction or that direction, or enough, I guess, conversation where I knew exactly where I wanted to be. I knew what I enjoyed. I enjoyed solving problems. I was good at maths. I liked working with others, and I wanted to be part of something or make a difference, but I couldn't quite pick what type of degree that would allow me to do that. So my first degree was actually a business degree, and I majored in finance. I thought I would start with something, not necessarily knowing where I wanted to go, but I thought I would start with something that I thought there was maths involved, finance, accounting. I could get somewhere along those lines. So that was what I started with. And then in 2010, I applied for a graduate program. I was an intern already, but I applied for a graduate program in Railcorp. And I asked for a placement in corporate strategy. And they mistakenly put me in the engineering asset strategy team. So I started there on my first day. It was definitely a different type of room, all up, it was quite different to what I was expecting. So I didn't know I was in the wrong place at the time. I soon found out probably that week, being new out of uni. I had somewhat experience in the field, but not necessarily where I was actually meant to be. So I noticed the mistake, and I spoke to my placement manager, and she said she would move me, but I just decided to give it a go and stay for 3 months. Similar, yeah, much to what Kate was saying earlier, that I was there, maybe I was there for a reason. So I stayed there for 3 months in that engineering asset strategy team. And then I ended up staying in the team overall for about 3 years. Through that placement, or through that area, so I was in Railcorp Transport. They sponsored me to do an engineering asset management degree. And then following on from that, I've done a diploma in infrastructure engineering, grad certificate in civil, and then I'm now currently completing my master's. So I'm still studying, but I've continuously expanded my degree, and I've kind of found where my passion is and where I think I can still go back to the original form of solving problems and being part of a change and being making a difference. And the transport industry has allowed me to do that in the various roles that I've been a part of, and the various teams I've had the privilege of working with, and all the different ideas have kind of allowed me to come to a point. I'm not saying I'll be here forever, but it's, I didn't start knowing I would be here, but I have been here for the last 10 years in various roles. And it's always given me that change and that ability to make a difference, either through sustainable decision making, which I've always been an advocate of and been a part of, or planning, or working as a team, or bringing others' ideas to come to a solution. So that's always helped. So yeah, so I'm still studying, and the transport, we can go to the next slide, Sarah. So my career in transport, what it allowed me to be is I've moved through various positions. A lot of it has been in engineering asset decision making. So I've been a part of the front end of projects in how we design and plan our solutions. I've been a part of the Beeline project. I don't know anyone in the Northern Beaches, the big yellow double-deck buses, and all the stops that were delivered last year in 2019. I've been part of Newcastle Light Rail that was delivered in February last year. So various projects where I've been able to be part of that planning, design, ensuring that strategic asset management approach. So we're not looking at necessarily delivery date, we're looking at whole solutions. So what we're getting for the life of what we're delivering, that we're ensuring that we're meeting sustainable outcomes. It's not short term, it's long term. And I'm an advocate for this part, and that's the constant views and the constant area that I've aimed to be a part of in all the roles or projects that I've been across. But what my role has also allowed me to be is work with the operators and maintainers. So once we have our solutions, how then we operate and maintain them efficiently, effectively, and to ensure that we continue the life out of what we're delivering for our services or our customers. So I've been able to work with various operators from our buses, bus networks, road network, ferry network, like ticketing, rail obviously, trains, but also the light rail, Transdev. So it's been quite a journey, and working with different views or different projects and different operators, it allows that holistic view of it's not, there's not necessarily one solution, there's multiple. And when we're looking at transport, it's not one mode, it's multiple modes. So in not looking at a strategy that is focused one way, but looking at a mode-to-modal approach with keeping up with future demand, even what's happening currently, keeping up with future-proofing networks, but also where the customer is going down the line and what the customer looks like in 10 years' time or 20 years' time, and then working with the projects or operators along that line. So it's always been interesting, always been diverse, and definitely enjoyed it along the way. Next slide. Okay, so these traits, they would be my view of what it's helped me along the way. It's not necessarily everyone's necessarily the skills, but it's what I think has helped along the way in all the roles that I've been in and been a part of. So first and foremost, I have to say stakeholder management. Now, for me, it's probably the number one item that I would say allows me to do my job effectively. Working with stakeholders, communicating with stakeholders, managing stakeholders, they're all really important traits that allow deliverables, allow you to get to your outcomes, but being cognizant that you can't work on a solution on your own. You need to get everyone's involvement. You need to have the ability to compromise, negotiate and influence, and that's all relating to how you manage stakeholders and your stakeholder engagement skills. Another one is being reliable. So I've always tried, that's always something that if I say something or keep to my word or keep to a promise or keep to a deliverable, keep everyone aware of where things are at. That's been an important skill. Working hard. I know it's 10 years of experience, but honestly, the amount of time and to be in the different projects and assignments or works or involvement, there's been a lot that goes into it, and I feel that that's always paid off and been recognised and allowed me to grow in the various career roles that I've been a part of. Another one is remaining calm, and that's, for me, that's whenever there's a situation where there is a lot of pressure or there is a tight deadline or a tight time frame, I found my ability to remain calm has helped. I don't know where it's come from. I come from a family of 7, and I'm the second youngest. It might have, I'm not sure, but it's remaining calm under pressure has always been important in getting deliverables, and I found that that's a skill that is quite useful in different situations, and it's something that you can be cognizant of when you're working with your team or working with other leaders or other managers. It's been quite useful. And the last one, but definitely not the last skill you need to have, is the ability to think in systems and not one path, and not necessarily hearing a problem and going to a solution, but actually understanding what the problem is that we're trying to solve, what demand we are trying to hit, without going straight into a solution, like thinking of the different aspects and the different areas that we need to involve in processes. So that's helped. Another one that's not on this list but has also been useful, even currently, I would say, is being flexible and adaptable to change, being agile with different environments. That's always helped, and it's not, change isn't, the way we see change and be adaptable to it can make a difference to different roles, projects, or deliverables that we're undertaking. Next slide. Thanks, Sarah. I feel like I'm talking a lot. Okay, so what's been important, I guess what's helped me along the way, and a lot of even being, having different roles and projects in different areas of your life. One thing that's really helped, I would say, is the networking element and working with industry. I've been a part of the Women in Engineering probably for the last, I don't know, 4+ years, maybe 5. But it's just having that network of like-minded people where you can, I think there's about 15 members and I look up to every single one of them, and it's having people around that you aspire to be or inspire to be. So having that type of networking around has always been a positive experience for me. There's also different industries that I've been interested in and been a part of, and that has helped in developing, I guess, the technical side. So being across technologies, being across what industry is doing, not only focusing on that work that I do or the organisation that I'm in, but seeing what's out there in terms of industry. So a few key ones for me would be rail, so RTAA and the ARA and the Permanent Way Institution, but also I have a heavy background in asset management, so I make sure I'm across any new industry benchmarking or studies in that area. And I also highly recommend, if you don't have a mentor, to look into a program that offers it. I know our group does and others, ARA does, UTS does. Having a mentor has helped me in my career tremendously. Next slide. Oh, I'll keep going, Sarah. So where am I now? I'll just wrap up here. So I'm in the Engineering and Maintenance Directorate in Sydney Trains. I look at, my role currently is looking at the integrity of rail assets, which is important to me. And I've been able to hone all the skills I've had in the last 10 years and bring it to this type of secondment. So I've been really happy to be a part of that. There's never a dull moment, especially current times, unfortunately. But what I found is my career, just along the way, never necessarily settling on one pathway. If you are interested in something or you have a question or you want to try something out, I've always been the first to put my hand up, just having the ability to adapt and change and step outside your comfort zone. So thank you for listening, everyone, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Samiha. And now we have our fourth presenter all the way from London. So Hugh is a Master of Urban Planning and Bachelor of Environment. Sorry, Hugh has a Masters of Urban Planning and Bachelor of Environment from the University of Melbourne. He was an urban planner at GHD, where his work focused on delivering transport, water, and renewable energy projects. Hugh is actively involved in the Planning Institute of Australia as a former committee member of the Victorian Board and president of the Young Planners Committee. His ambition is to reform Australian cities. In particular, he's interested in how policy interventions and infrastructure investments can increase the sustainability, prosperity, and equality of Australian cities. Hugh is currently undertaking a Masters of Philosophy in Planning, Growth and Regeneration at the University of Cambridge with the support of the Sir John Monash Scholarship. I'll now hand over to Hugh.
Hi, everybody. Firstly, thank you so much to all the speakers and all the organisers, as well as everybody who is watching this evening. Next slide, please. Can you hear me? Can you hear me all good? Yeah, sorry, next slide as well.
Yes.
Apologies for any dodgy Wi-Fi from across the pond. So perfect, just this one. So the first one I thought, as we are in a global pandemic, and I know there's a lot of students or sort of early professionals like me right now, probably a little bit worried about what the marketplace is going to look like. I think being an optimist, I think the economy will bounce back, and I think it's important to sort of see this through like an academic and historical grounding, where the post-COVID economy and city is going to change, and that previous events and plagues and Black Deaths and even SARS in Hong Kong couple of years ago fundamentally changed how we use cities, we use transport systems and processes. And I think it presents a really interesting and fascinating opportunity to figure out what type of city and what type of transport network is going to emerge, be it more active riding, but also just how many switches, knobs, button holders we now press in our daily commute. So next slide, please. Oh, perfect. So going forward, sorry, next one, if that's okay. Sorry, no, yeah, but so I think the key project that has shaped me is getting to work for 3.5 years at GHD, where I was majority on level crossing removal authority. And this project, a bit like the other speakers, was sort of a surprise. So to my great dismay, I didn't get the opportunity to work on the Melbourne Metro Rail Tunnel, and instead I was put on level crossings, which at first I thought was an absolute disaster for my career. And it's turned out to be one of the biggest, unbelievable and best professional experiences of my life as an urban planner. Getting the chance to work on urban design guidelines, planning scheme amendments, which sort of facilitate the planning, the official planning process for these projects, as well as getting to work on like a sustainability assessment of how the project was achieving its Green Star ratings of stations, as well as communication strategies of how to figure out and adapt community consultation, advice, concerns and tips for station development into the actual built designs was incredibly rewarding. And you literally did get the opportunity to shape people's lives on how they use public transport, but also the green spaces and the retail and residential opportunities around stations. And the new station below is at Rosanna on the Hurstbridge Rail dual line duplication. And I'm originally a Sydney-sider who had moved to Melbourne for uni and stayed there to work. And I had never been to Rosanna before, let alone heard of it, to my shame. And so it was a real amazing opportunity to sort of work on that restation with an incredible architectural team, community groups who are really advocating for the preservation of green space, but as well like as an amazing engineering crew. And I think the most important that that experience of Rosanna, which is a very difficult engineering site, is the ability to sort of communicate, respect, and be able to have frank and fearless conversations with your colleagues, and also receive constructive criticism of yourself. Because the one thing I learned being about a level planner on working on level crossings is that everybody has an opinion, and whilst they might not all come from the same technical background, either from the CEO level downwards to a community member consultation, you've got to listen, you've got to be sort of holistic, because you'd be amazed what you learn. And it's fantastic to see the station today. Next slide, please. So those 3.5 years at GHD and working on level crossings and Westgate Tunnel and North East Link really inspired me to sort of pursue an active interest in public policy, because I was fascinated to know how we appraise projects within our government system, and sort of what mechanisms we can to sort of integrate more community benefits. And so I'm over here at Cambridge, and my main research focus is the GRI book, and that's the key UK infrastructure appraisal document. And that's really interesting and why it's relevant to Australia is that a lot of the Infrastructure Australia toolkits and a lot of the state toolkits are heavily influenced with the UK system. And the UK system basically currently favours projects in London and the southeast, opposed to projects in the Midlands and the north, because the economics of London and the southeast do perform better in the cost-benefit analysis. So I'm sort of interested in how well-being, livability, sustainability metrics can be integrated into the Green Book. And what's fascinating is, I think this is with COVID and climate change, be it New Zealand Labor with Jacinda, or even Boris Johnson here as a Conservative government. Both governments are really committed to improving the well-being and prosperity of nations through like an equalising. So in the UK, it's the North. In New Zealand, it's sort of more social policies. So I think, and they all see transport as the key mechanism to facilitate that. So my research is sort of, well, how can the big Treasury document sort of help integrate sustainability and sort of well-being concerns? And for me, this was sort of a real opportunity to sort of go integrate sort of the tangible professional experiences with more the academic theoretical and into the public policy outcome. Next slide, please. The biggest professional advice is probably I love this Bob Hawke quote, because you actually, to sort of move up in advice, and for me, through being at Uni Melbourne, sort of where I am today and where I'd like to go in the future, I think you just have to get on with it. And you actually sort of have to really listen to yourself. Like, we have managers, we've got Instagram, inspirational Instagram quotes, a bunch of social media of our peers and forums like today. And it can sometimes be a little bit overwhelming. And so that's why I think it's really important to sort of have those quiet moments and have the opportunities to really think about sort of where you're going to go, receive all the advice, have amazing mentors, friends, family, but sort of being able to sort of step back and think, if it's family, if it's travel, if it's research, if it's just doing that all-nighter, to know what skills can get you to where you want, sort of in 5 and 10, 20 years, which is why these events are so amazing, because you never might know what might pop up. And next slide, please. So to keep under the 5 minutes, I'm going to do a bit of spruiking. So I'm going to John Wire Scholarship, and applications are open. So they're open to all Australians, on citizens and PRs, and it's open to any ages, and it's to study sort of wherever you want overseas for postgraduate or PhD. Applications are open, and they love people in the built environment, engineering, architecture. They hand out around 20 scholarships a year, and they're really interested in helping students or prospective students sort of study in their field for the benefit of Australia. And engineers, planners, architects have a real tangible outcome through the built environment. So they're absolutely keen to meet students and help them along the way. And if you've got any questions, please feel free. It's being able to study overseas here at Cambridge has been probably one of the most rewarding and challenging parts of my career, and it wouldn't be possible without sort of having that financial help. And I couldn't speak more high enough about it. And especially sort of the reason I mentioned it is sort of I applied on a whim last year at GHD, thinking I wanted to push myself out of my comfort zone, and was shocked each time I sort of got through each of the stages, and here I am today. But upon reflection, I think sort of the reason why I definitely got it is because they just saw the tangible impact. And I had to be very authentic in who I was, and I wasn't there faking it. And I think that's what I sort of learned at Level Crossings, because if you're either presenting to councils about what your new urban design guidelines are going to be, or your community forum with 200 very unhappy people about Skyrail, you can't lie, you can't fib, you can't go into talking points, you just have to be your authentic self. So I think that's my final advice, and I'd hand back over to you, Sarah. I think that was under 5 minutes just.
Thank you, Hugh, and definitely I also agree on the advice of being your authentic self. So thank you to all our speakers, Hugh, Samiha, Mike, and Kate. And now we're at the Q&A session. I know we've gone slightly over the time, but if the people who are online and they're willing to stay a bit later for the Q&A, we're happy to keep it going. So I'll open up with the first question, and a few of you have asked this in both the chat and the pre-webinar series. So it's on how can students find careers given the current COVID-19 situation, and what the employment situation may be like afterwards. So I'll open that up to the 4 speakers.
So it's challenging right now. I don't have a hiring role at Pitt and Sherry, but we certainly have still been hiring people. We've appointed 3 or 4 new people, I think, over the last 3 weeks. We haven't appointed, we have kept our undergrads and grads working, but we certainly haven't taken on any new graduates, because it's very difficult to pair them up with supervisors when everyone's working at home. But I think you still need to do what you always need to do, which is network, try and contact people, phone people, message them. It is going to be difficult. But I think, We are starting to open up our offices to limited staff over the next few weeks, and I think certainly there will be opportunities coming up over, certainly in construction or anything related to construction. Work's definitely powering ahead, and there will continue to be jobs available over the next 4 to 6 months. And the people who are top of mind and standing right there in front of you are the ones probably who are most likely to be offered a position.
Did the other speakers have
Samiha, do you have a
additional
view?
comments? Yep.
Yeah. What came to mind when I heard that question was, yeah, agree, it is challenging. I think if you look anywhere in the government sector, we are still advertising roles and there are still jobs in the transport industry from a government lens. And what I suppose, in terms of what you can offer, the young bright minds, if we're saying we're coming out of uni or we're coming out of internships or graduate programs, is that ability to be creative and think a bit differently, because I think that's what we need moving forward. And if you can give that across and show that you have the ability to think differently and you have those ideas and you want to contribute, I think that's what we need moving forward. It's not, I don't think anyone wants to keep the world as is. They do want to adapt to a change, but creatively and innovatively. And I agree with Kate, network as much as you can, attend sessions. I find all my last roles, even within organisations or within different organisations, having a conversation, hearing about something, showing interest, and then following through with that with a message or an email, and just continually being your own advocate. No one's going to give you a job, but if you continue being your own advocate, you might find a pathway there.
I think, to be honest, actually, I mean, it's not the same situation, but I think, you know, if I can give you the example, I graduated in 1992. I know the graduating class in 1991, when they finished, 3 of those students didn't already have a job. In 1992, when I finished, 3 of the students had a job. The rest of us had no leads and no appointment. So the job that I got at Gisborne Council definitely wasn't my ideal job. It was advertised, and I applied for it because I was just applying for anything so I could get paid. I think they had 110 applicants. They interviewed 10 people and I got the job. So I was actually very lucky to get it, even though it wasn't what I wanted. It was a job. And I think anything you can find is worth taking, because it will give you lots of skills in terms of work, even if it's not your ideal job, in terms of communicating with people, and there'll be opportunities there. So it's probably, or could well be, worth being a bit broader in the roles that you're looking for as well.
Yep, and I think hearing your story, Kate, and also Samiha's and also Hugh and Mike's career stories, you've all had very different experiences, and most of you have moved countries, if not cities, and that, I think, can add to your experience. And I think, just to add on, for students who are currently looking for internship or job opportunities, I definitely think that it is hard to find opportunities at the moment due to the nature of it, but do take what you get, because you never know where that will lead and how that would shape you and your future career. Following on that question, maybe this is more for Hugh and Samiha to answer. How can you find transport planning roles that prioritize sustainability and low carbon transport? Or how would you search for these roles, or what would you advise if someone was looking for these specific roles in companies?
I would go first. I think the first thing to do would be might be a little bit labour intensive, but it's a really good tip, is look at the big major projects, be it say Sydney Metro or the transport study or the transport master plan by the City of Melbourne, and obviously contact those projects because they have like massive, really switched on sustainability teams. But also see who the consultants are and sub-consultants are, and they're usually listed. And like a lot of, for example, big engineering firms and medium and boutique engineering firms have really strong sustainability components or planning teams that do, for example, green stars. But it also gives you sort of an idea of sort of what firms are really strong in that space. So, for example, SGS Economics and Planning, which is sort of like a public policy and planning firm, they're really strong in like the policy space of planning and sort of government regulation. Whilst on the sort of the flip side, I'd say GHD has a really fantastic sustainability team that sort of was within Level Crossings and were amazing advocates within the GHD family about sort of advocating sort of sustainable design, but also sustainable thinking within the systems thinking's approach. So I think that's sort of a good cheeky way. And then also just looking at, say, for example, who wins the Property Council Green Built Environment Award. So see what firms, see what private practices are winning those. And usually that's a pretty good indication of who's best. And also linking back to the previous question of jobs, if you know who's winning the awards and who's, you're showing you're not just interested in sustainable transport, but who's leading that push, that shows that you're a really engaged candidate and you're engaged within the sector as well. You're not just looking for a job, this is a full career and professional life path as well.
Yeah.
I'll just add to Hugh.
Samiha, did you?
Yeah. Just on the same line in Hughes, there's the another area you can look at is there's not a lot, but there's the ISCA rating. So the Sustainability Council. So with any jobs that we have, for example, you might need to have an ISCA rating or something along those lines, either within a government or other organisations. So if you look at companies that have those ratings or what level they're at, or they could, if you want to align to those types of organisations, then you can go that pathway. I'm in Sydney in Transport Government. We also have the Transport Futures Plan, and that will align and include targets for sustainability. So and it's publicly available. So if you look at those areas, and then when you go for a role aligned to those or those strategies or those items that you've noted in those types of documents, just covering a bit of both. Companies should be going in that direction, but I know the Transport Futures Plan includes specific targets for those.
I would also say
great
that
tips.
Yeah, sometimes you need to bring that sustainability and low carbon approach to any job. So if that's your interest, if you can develop that interest yourself, and if you are on a project team, you're in the best place to influence the outcomes. So many companies are moving in that direction, sometimes really slowly, but you've got much more leverage if you're inside working on the projects than not. So I wouldn't discount a job and not think that you can't have an influence in those areas.
Yeah, I definitely think that's very true, Kate. A lot of companies are being more conscious and more sustainable. And so definitely there's lots of scope for everyone out there, whether you are junior or senior within the company, to influence your company. Mike, I've got a question from Stephanie. How is academic research incorporated into the decision making by governments? So I think you, yep.
So yeah, that is, I think, is question I'm also still thinking about, because I'm not in transportation, but this is always the question, like how academia can contribute, like, to the industry or to government policy making. That is the goal that for academia research. So one thing, like, based on my experience, I don't like work specifically like to contribute to this policy side, but I mainly work on to develop tools that can help to for the operations for the private sectors. For example, like in Hong Kong, like we have developed several algorithms and also software we transfer to them. Basically, it helped them for their daily operations, they save lots of money by saving the labor cost and some of the investment in the infrastructures. And also, like for the early bird promotion, that is one big project that it started in 2014. But when I joined, like this, the second round, like they want to update the early bird promotion in Hong Kong. And at that time, like we have developed the optimal plans, how to update them, and also, for example, to incorporate like different modes instead of only like the metro system, because in Hong Kong it's different. The metro system is operated by MTR, but the bus system is operated by other private companies. So that is something that we have helped them to design the multimodal promotion, early bird promotion, that from the system level, how this demand management matters can help the city. Just to summarize, I don't have a like specific answer like how could we contribute to the policy, to the government at this time. But one project that I mentioned for the personalized incentive design, that one is we try to look at like from the behavior side, how could we use the technology, use the data analytics to learn passengers' habit and their behavior, and then we try to get the intervention using the either like information or incentive. We provide to them in real time, so that like we can achieve the objective, like we can solve the congestion. But the main important thing is to shape their behavior in the long term. And this is the key question for different areas, either like in health, in environment, and also in transportation. Transportation is just one case study for this work. It's like how to make use of the technology and the data to try to shape travelers' behavior towards sustainable travel in the long term by spending like spending less, but we can achieve more. That's the one thing that I can think that we can contribute to the government policy in terms of like the infrastructure and financial investments. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And from the private side, Kate, Samiha, or Hugh, with your experience at GHD, have you seen how your companies have used academic research to better transport understanding or transport planning and policies?
It's really well connected. I think as a consultant, at the end of the day, you're only as good as your last project or the last proposal you've just submitted. And clients, particularly government, really expect you to be up to date. So I know at GHD, we did a lot of work with the University of Melbourne and RMIT, actually putting academics and research teams in those institutions into bids for relevant projects. But also, like, there was a real strong focus on ensuring everybody at GHD, and particularly, I know in the planning team on the major projects, I think we're fully aware of the researchers, the latest research, and that's through active community consultations and stakeholder engagements with those institutions. Those institutions, be it at RMIT, like Billy Giles Cordy, they're very strong at ensuring either publicly or privately what their research is saying and pushing for better outcomes, as they should, and we're a product of that. But also, like, I think there was a real big focus on going, well, if there's actually sort of a landmark city shaping project, and you're paying, any consultancy, be it Clayton Utz or GHD or PwC, a lot of money, then you've got to sort of expect, best practice as like bare minimum. So there's a real sort of commercial incentive, but for me, it was also like, and a lot of people in the teams that I work with, a real sort of emotional belief that you're literally getting to shape a city. So the best research and the best outcomes, be it from Copenhagen or latest Melbourne researchers, needs to be integrated, because you're having a lasting legacy, and nobody wants to go to bed thinking at the end of the night, oh, I wish I'd done that better, or I wished I reached out more. I think for me, it's surprisingly human about these things, you know, in a sense.
Mhm. Okay, so I'm conscious that we are running over time. I just have one more question to ask all the speakers. So thank you for sharing your career journey with all of us. And as I picked up through your career journeys, it does sound like there's been times and many times in a lot of your journeys where you've experienced stress. And right now, under COVID-19, I think a lot of us are experiencing stress to different levels and where we are in the transport profession, either as professionals or students. What would be your one great recommendation on how to reduce stress or deal with stress?
In order? So I think
Yep.
yeah, so if it's immediate stress during the day, I think the trick of diaphragm breathing, 3 deep breaths, to just slow down your breath and kind of trick your fight or flight reaction to go away is hugely beneficial, and you can probably check it out on YouTube. It's for people who do yoga. It's where you breathe slowly into your belly and then breathe out even slower. So that can really stop you going into that really terrible space where you become very reactive and very stressed. And the other one is 10 minutes of meditation, I think is also really important. And my final one is just to think that those things do actually make you stronger. So all those, you do learn a lot when you're in those really hard times, and you will be grateful for it sometime in the future, if you can be. That's it, probably.
Thank you.
Yeah, for me, I think it is important to find out the reasons why we are stressful. So what I like to do is usually if I know maybe there's some due date for proposal writing or this promotion pressures, I would like to talk to my mentors, talk to some senior professors, and to seek for their advice, and also basically try to find ways to get the solutions for the problem, and then work out the time plans. If we want to achieve that, what I should do now, based on the situation now, this is what I can do, and then that gives me a sense that I'm on the track, that somehow can mitigate the pressure that I have. I'd also like to take a break, take a holiday to travel, just to have some good food in the city, or just relax yourself for the whole day without doing anything. That is also help a bit. Yeah, that's from me.
For me, especially now in current times, what I try to do to reduce stress, I did this previously, but it also helps now. I try to start the day a bit differently because we are working mostly from home. I try to start the day with a run or a bit of exercise. That helps me calm for the rest of the day, so that helps me. In terms of dealing with stress, what I try to do is be present. So it is a bit like meditating, or be present in what you're currently doing, or what I'm currently doing, or where I'm sitting, or where I'm looking at, and try not to think of everything ahead, but be present in the place that I can control. So being mindful in that aspect. And I'm just going to add another tip just for others around you. So especially in these current times, just be human, be a bit more kind. We try to always be kind, but just be mindful in this current situation that we do need to make an effort to be more human towards others. We don't know what anyone's thinking or feeling. So at the end of an email or a phone call, just be human and be kind to others. they're my tips.
I completely agree with what everybody has said. So the only thing I'll say is that I heard a really good quote, which has been really helpful for me. And it's that whilst we might all be in the same storm with COVID-19 and the economy and sort of family situations and health concerns, at the end of the day, we're all in our own different boats. So if you're able to have perspective on the boat that you're in and be mindful and be considerate of what other boats people are traveling in, I think that's a really important grounding place, because at the end of the day, pressures and stresses usually are external, and they usually pinpoint internal anxieties. So if you can understand from like a 360 where other people are coming from and sort of what's impacting them and your own deliverables, I think that just helps as well. And then do everything that the last 3 speakers have perfectly advised. Thank you.
Thank you. So that concludes our session for today. Again, apologies that it went almost 20 minutes over time, but I think it's been a really exciting session to understand the different types of transport careers. And I hope that's helped a lot of you who are dialing in and trying to understand more about the transport career. So I think in answer to one person's question, this session is recorded and it should be up on the ITE-ANZ website in a few days' time. We do appreciate your feedback, so please fill out the feedback questionnaire or you can access it through this QR code. And finally, a big thank you to Kate, Mike, Samiha and Hugh for sharing your stories with us.